With under a minute remaining, the Knights needed a game-saving stop. As the ball bounced loose, DeVore rushed in, but it was Tyler Jake's crushing hit that sealed the play. On the sidelines, the Hornets coach looked on helplessly, knowing only a miracle could save his team now. Jake recorded 13 tackles in the game and took a moment to rise after his last, irritating player number 32. A deep pass was launched toward Moore slightly high, but he caught it in stride only to be brought down immediately by Jake. It was likely the Hornets' last real opportunity, and Moore's frustration was clear. Unable to defeat the Knights on the field, Moore took a low blow by bringing up Jake's father, igniting a fury that Jake couldn't contain. He charged at Moore and slammed him to the ground, not for the game, but out of raw emotion. Consumed by rage, Jake struck at anyone who tried to stop him. Chaos erupted as players from both teams stormed in, turning the game into a full-blown brawl, while the referee watched, powerless to intervene. Back in the locker room, Jake's bruises told the story. A teammate invited him to a party, but he turned it down. He had to pack for his move to Orlando, where trouble always seemed to find him. At home, his mother's disappointment over the fight was clear. The tension lingered until she left, leaving Jake alone to care for his younger brother, who was mostly self-sufficient. Jake and Charlie began packing up the garage, and Jake assured him he didn't mind the move. Charlie's growing tennis career made it worthwhile. But when Charlie accidentally knocked over a box, old memories came rushing back. Most of their father's belongings had already been donated to Goodwill by their mom, but this box had been overlooked. A strange feeling came over Jake as he picked up the box, then he tossed it aside like it meant nothing. At his new high school, he kept a low profile, drifting through campus unnoticed. But trouble didn't stay away for long. One student punched another in front of a few onlookers, and when Jake stepped in to help, it backfired. The victim turned and hit Jake squarely, as if to remind him he was still caught in the same cycle of violence. Jake stood in silence as the boy glared and charged back at him, a clear sign he wasn't welcome. Later, in class, the teacher's question was met with silence until Jake answered, just as the teacher turned to a blonde girl. After class, the girl, Baja, thanked him. They exchanged a few playful words, getting to know each other briefly before her friends arrived and pulled her away. Dinner was meant to be calm, but Jake couldn't leave his frustration behind. When his mom asked about school, he replied with sarcasm, sparking a sharp exchange. She didn't hold back, reminding him that his past behavior made it hard to stay rooted anywhere. Meanwhile, the student Jake had tried to help earlier was named Max. At lunch, Max approached Jake with a friendly tone, mentioning that his recent football fight had gone viral, immediately grabbing Jake's attention. Max claimed it wasn't bullying, but part of a deal, even offering video proof. He kept pressing, describing the benefits and flashy moves like it was the dream everyone chased. Jake appeared indifferent, but Max wasn't bluffing. Jake's reputation spread quickly, trailing him through every hallway and screen. On his way home, Baja called out from a car, playfully teasing him before handing over a slip of paper with the party address. She hoped he'd show up, and Jake decided he would. As the car pulled away, he walked off with a sense of relief and a spark of anticipation in his step. Still avoiding his mom, Jake skipped dinner and headed upstairs to print a city map to help him navigate the area. Later, dressed in a clean shirt, he arrived at a party in an upscale house and ran into Max again. The two hit it off quickly, weaving through the crowd side by side. Max soon pulled out his camera, eager to document the night's events. Jake snapped a few candid shots that irritated some girls, but he didn't seem to care. That's when he met Ryan, who carried himself like he owned the party. For Ryan, parties were just background noise in Orlando. He led Jake out to the balcony and revealed what really mattered. Fight night, a place where anyone could step into the ring. People of every background, even exes, showed up to let loose. Jake wondered who was in charge, but soon realized the chaos had no true leader. With a faint smirk, he started to see it differently. Then Baja arrived, effortlessly drawing his attention. But before he could dwell on it, the crowd began to shift, eyes turning toward the main event, the looming showdown between Ryan and Jake. Ryan peeled off his shirt, flexing for the crowd and suggesting Jake owed them a show, especially after his viral uppercut. He also wanted to test himself against Jake. The tension built, but Jake had no interest in fighting. Sensing an opening when Jake glanced at Beja, Ryan seized the moment and kissed her, staring Jake down with defiance. Beja's stunned expression showed she hadn't expected the kiss, but the stunt pushed Jake to leave. At the exit, a bodyguard blocked his way. Desperate to win, Ryan played dirty, bringing up Jake's father's death and cruelly reminding him he'd been awake in the car while his dad wasn't. Jake tried to charge, barely restrained by a few guys as tension surged. Both he and Ryan were ready for a fight, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. No one noticed Beja slipping away unnoticed. Breaking free, Jake lunged and shoved Ryan, who only smirked and insisted on a proper match with gloves. Jake didn't hesitate. The coordinator swiftly calmed the crowd and laid down the rules. A clean fight, ending only by knockout or tap out. While Ryan basked in the crowd's applause, Max kept the camera rolling and caught the moment Jake began to move. He shouted that Jake was getting back up, the fight wasn't over yet. Dazed but determined, Jake struggled to his feet, only to be met by Ryan's relentless assault. His defense wavered and fatigue made him an easy target, sending him crashing down once more. Max pleaded for him to stop, but Jake refused. Bloodied and battered, he rose again, embracing the pain his body bent like a trembling comma in the chaos of the fight. Amid the flash of cameras, Jake could barely register Max lifting him and carrying him back to the apartment. The next morning, Jake woke with a swollen eye and a face covered in bruises. When Charlie walked in, he was surprised but stayed calm. Their mom was out for now, but it wouldn't be long before she saw the damage. Jake couldn't take Charlie to the bus stop, but Charlie simply nodded, understanding, and let him rest. At school, the fight remained the center of attention. She abruptly got up and walked away, leaving her friends puzzled. Later, back home and still covered in bruises, Jake stumbled upon the box he'd once dismissed as junk. It brought back memories of fishing then. In a surge of frustration with the past, he hurled it across the room. A sharp pain in his ribs reminded Jake he was far from healed. Meanwhile, at school, Max spotted Ryan in the hallway, reenacting the fight and soaking up the attention. Back home, Charlie returned from school, warmed up some pizza, and sat in silence, his thoughts fixed on his brother. Jake was still asleep when Charlie peeked in, so he quietly left the plate and slipped out to tennis practice. Later, a knock at the door stirred Jake awake. Max stepped inside, not carrying regret, but hope. Hope that something had been lit in Jake the night before. Max brought a CD loaded with training clips inspired by Coach Jean Roquois, a second chance, driven by his belief in Jake's potential. But Jake wasn't interested. He shut it off, unmoved by guilt or the memory of the fight. Disappointed, Max left, leaving the disc behind, something Jake might watch one day, if only out of curiosity. Jake arrived at the training center, and Max greeted him with a wide, excited smile, gesturing toward Roquois, whose reputation spoke for itself. At the center of the room, Roquois' commanding voice guided the students through the COI nage, a shoulder throw designed to bring an opponent down, followed by a swift headlock. Max introduced Jake to Roquois, mentioning his interest in joining the class. Though Roquois hesitated, at first clearly noting Jake's battered appearance, Jake's determination won him a place in the beginner group with Max. Despite that, Jake fixated on advanced techniques, quickly showing he was a fast learner. Roquois smiled and signaled the start of the advanced session. At his command, the class jumped into Circuit 1, a rapid-fire sequence of 1-minute cardio drills. Jake threw himself into the workout with full intensity, determined to keep up, while Max stayed close, guiding him through every move. Jake fought his way up the rope climb, slipping more than once but refusing to give up, determined to hit the bar before time ran out. Without pause, Roquois moved straight into pairing everyone for the next 3-minute round. Jake sized up his smaller opponent, Miles, and assumed perhaps too confidently that this round would be easier. The moment the match began, Miles quickly flipped Jake to the mat and locked in his arm. Despite his efforts, Jake couldn't escape and was forced to tap out. But in the following round, Rockwell began to take note of Jake's strong defensive instincts. Jake continued to press the attack, but every move missed as Miles expertly evaded and slipped in a rear chokehold. Max urged him to tap, but Jake held out stubbornly until he blacked out. When he came to, Rockwell was helping him up, concern in his eyes. He was clearly impressed by Jake's grit, but made it clear that such recklessness came with consequences. Jake was convinced he could have escaped if he hadn't blacked out, a belief that only deepened Rockwell's respect for him. Still, Rockwell set a firm rule for the next day's session: no fighting outside the gym. Anyone who broke it would be immediately expelled. After class, Max was thrilled that Jake had made such a strong impression on Rockwell enough to ride shotgun instead of taking the bus. Later that evening, Charlie opened the door and was stunned to find a beautiful blonde standing there, Beja, coming to see Jake. Jake wasn't ready to forgive, still convinced Beja had played a role in his humiliation. She was visibly remorseful, her eyes welling with tears as she admitted things had spiraled out of control. Though she tried to explain, she ultimately told Jake he was no different from the rest, a fighter pushed past his breaking point. Beja tried to connect, revealing that she had once felt lost too, clinging to her current role only because she had finally found a place to fit in, even if it meant pretending to be the popular girl with the popular boyfriend. But Jake stayed distant, unmoved by her honesty. With nothing more to say, she walked away. An hour before class, Jake arrived at the gym, recognizing that quiet determination, Rockwell let him in. Jake paid 2 months' tuition up front, more than expected, perhaps hoping it might earn him some goodwill. But Rockwell remained indifferent, leading him into the gym without a word. Jake began training on his own before class, but every move felt hollow, as if his effort lacked purpose. Rockwell called out Jake's stubbornness and poor breathing technique, both key reasons for his repeated failures. It was no surprise he couldn't land the full combo, 3 punches followed by a roundhouse kick. Rockwell stepped in to demonstrate, delivering each strike in rhythm with controlled breaths, effortlessly sending the heavy bag swinging off its frame. Jake was taken aback by how effortlessly Rockwell moved, yet he stubbornly kept trying to imitate him, fighting to sync his breathing with each strike. Rockwell reminded him to focus on finding his own rhythm rather than forcing someone else's. As the morning wore on and the gym filled up, Ryan soaked in the attention, flanked by his stunning girlfriend and the usual crowd of popular friends trailing behind him. Back home, Jake's mom had returned to her usual routine: cleaning, organizing, keeping busy. Meanwhile, at the gym, Jake was no longer just mimicking movements. He was truly improving. His progress didn't go unnoticed. Classmates began to warm up to him, and even Rockwell offered a rare, approving smile. But with his mom back, the silence he once hid behind was gone. She counted the missing money, and the bag in Jake's hand confirmed her fears. Inside were boxing gloves, proof he'd been fighting. No words were needed. Her reaction was firm. It had to stop. Earlier, Jake had asked Rockwell a question and been brushed off. But now it made sense. Rockwell lived at the gym, which explained why he trained from the moment he woke up. In class, Jake and Beja were paired up, but the tension between them lingered. Jake kept his distance, and Beja grew increasingly frustrated that her apology had been brushed aside. As her patience ran out, Jake walked off, prompting her to turn back to Ryan. She tried to speak with Ryan in private, but he remained surrounded by his friends. She confronted him about the unfair fight with Jake and how his growing arrogance was becoming too much. "Pushed too far," Ryan snapped, lashing out and claiming he was the only reason anyone even noticed her. Ryan didn't hold back his words, controlling and cruel, only confirming what she'd always suspected: he was still just a bully. That was all she needed to finally walk away for good. Meanwhile, Jake took his bottled-up anger to the gym, unleashing it with every punch he threw. Rockwell noticed it right away. Jake had power, but no control. Stepping in to spar, he tried to slow the tempo, but Jake came at him hard, fueled by raw emotion and sharpened skill. When Rocco's attempts to rein him in failed, he told Jake to leave. Jake stormed out, landing one last hit, not with his fists, but with words. Rocco stayed composed, unfazed. Max chased after Jake, trying to talk him down, but Jake was too deep in his thoughts to listen. In a bold move, Max stopped the car in the middle of the street, forcing a moment of clarity. A blaring horn from behind jolted Jake just enough to snap him out of it. Jake threw a punch before anyone could react, igniting a chaotic, brutal scene that quickly went viral, racking up thousands of views with him at the center. Later, at a lakeside party, he appeared in the crowd, one of several familiar faces. Ryan was there too, as smug as ever, and so was Baja, though it was clear whatever they had was already over. Jake quietly reminded her that everyone had seen the video, and though Baja stepped forward, hoping to close the gap between them, he stayed distant, his tone flat, offering nothing. From a distance, Ryan noticed the tension right away. Waiting for the perfect moment, he followed Jake into the bathroom, not to talk, but to reassert who was really in control. Exhausted and limping, Jake intended to walk home alone, but Max insisted on staying by his side. Eventually, Jake asked about Beatdown, the name Ryan had dropped earlier, now gaining buzz. Max brought him home and played a video on the computer. What Jake saw was something else entirely. Raw, intense footage filled with hype and packed arenas. Beatdown wasn't just a fight, it was a full-blown war. This brutal tournament, straightforward yet drawing crowds like the Super Bowl of street racing, invites only the top racers. With just a month left, invitations have already been sent via text. Rocco noticed Jake's bruises and trembling, but said nothing, sending him out quietly after all. The rules were clear. After Jake left, Rocco vented his frustration on the heavy bag. At home, Jake's mother, her eyes heavy with worry, was furious. Jake was meant to set a good example, not add to her burdens. Exhausted from constantly cleaning up his messes, she stood firm, despite Charlie's explanation that it was just a tennis accident. To her, Jake was still supposed to be the role model. Jake returned to the gym, but was turned away by Rocco. Undeterred, he waited with Max, searching for an opportunity to speak. Later, when he encountered Rocco at the grocery store, Jake confessed that his anger was creating tension at home, and the gym was the only place where he could manage it. Rocco listened and allowed Jake back in. The training was relentless push-ups, cardio, boxing, and intense wrestling compressed a year's progress into mere days. To keep up, Jake even changed his diet, adopting raw foods to meet the demanding regimen. As Jake and Rocco ran along the beach, sharing jokes, a budding friendship took root. Rocco eventually opened up, revealing that his devotion to the gym was fueled by the pain of losing Joseph, his father's cherished son. Though younger, Joseph was exceptional and his father's favorite. After Joseph was shot at a club, Rocco became distant from his father. Training pressed on, rich with deep life lessons. Remembering this, Jake went to support Charlie at his tennis match, cheering on his brother. Their mother was surprised by Jake's visit and tried to heal the family's divide, but Jake felt things had already improved. Seeking to make amends, he found Baja at a cafe, apologized, and forgave her missteps. Moved by his maturity, Baja softened. In quiet understanding, they shared a long-awaited, tender kiss. That evening, Jake's mother visited the gym to speak with Rocco about the positive changes she'd seen in Jake. She thanked Rocco for his dedication and hoped Jake would finally stop blaming himself for his father's death. Rocco reassured her that Jake was headed in the right direction. After leaving next month's tuition payment, she quietly departed. At the cafe, Max eagerly talked about Jake's upcoming beatdown fight, but Jake quickly announced he was pulling out, deflating Max's excitement. Determined not to boost Ryan's ego, Jake chose to let Ryan face the match alone. Afterwards, he took Baja home. She playfully threw a few punches, and he replied with a gentle sweep that made her laugh. Between them, a healed wound now brought comfort. When Jake softly touched her from behind and was met with a kiss, the moment grew deeper. But just as their mood lifted, Charlie arrived with a call from their mom, quickly cooling the atmosphere. Elsewhere, Ryan was with his friends when a brief, tense argument erupted with his father, who fiercely upheld the family's pride. His friends saw the frustration unfold and were stunned to hear that Jake had pulled out of the fight. Furious, Ryan knew the battle was far from over. That same night, Ryan arrived at the gym searching for news, but found Jake absent. Max confirmed Jake's absence, and Ryan invited him over, feigning peace. The night ended with Max beaten and bloodied on the floor, Ryan standing over him delivering a ruthless, unexpected blow. Even Jake's friends were stunned by Ryan's brutal assault. When Jake answered a knock, he found Max nearly unconscious by the roadside as a car sped off. Fueled by rage, Jake ignored Bage's pleas to stay calm and began to walk away until Rocroi stepped in and stopped him. Jake was ready to leave, but Rocroi cautioned him that another rule violation would mean the end. Their talk grew sincere when Rocroi confessed his regret over past mistakes with his own brother. That honesty softened the tension. Though he didn't hold Jake back, Rocroi emphasized the need for him to own his actions. Jake hurried home, packed his belongings, and left without a word to his mother. His fight was entering its final chapter. At Beatdown, adrenaline surged as he readied himself to make an impact. The event erupted with a knockout in the opening match, igniting the crowd's frenzy. Jake entered the ring to jeers, while Ryan received roaring cheers. The schedule changed. They wouldn't face off immediately, but compete in a tournament where each had to earn their win. Ryan dominated his opponent with calculated aggression, while Jake remained steady, relying on calm precision and control. Everything went smoothly until the quarterfinals, when a hard kick to Jake's ribs left him in pain, requiring more than just strength to endure. Ryan silently took note of Jake's vulnerability. Backstage, Beja comforted Jake, boosting his spirits with encouraging words and a kiss that helped him overcome the pain. Ryan crossed the line by jabbing his opponent in the eye, and was promptly disqualified despite his team's protests. Hearing this, Jake was ready to leave until he saw Ryan waiting for him outside. Ryan challenged Jake silently, drawing the crowd into the parking lot to watch. Ryan struck fiercely, aiming for Jake's ribs, but Jake endured the pain with determination. Even trapped in a tight chokehold, he refused to surrender, ignoring the chaos around him until he suddenly shifted his position. He transformed his pain, guilt, and Rocroi's teachings into raw power, breaking free and landing a crushing kick that floored Ryan. The fight ended not with noise, but with a mutual look of respect and Jake's steady calm. Afterwards, Rocroi left the gym to return to his roots, while Ryan finally released the anger he had long buried.